Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching Big Ed on 90 Day The Single Life. Let's watch.
Back to all the good times we had. And that's just what I miss the most, is having my friend, my best friend.
I mean, I don't know where or if we can move on. I mean, but I want you to be happy.
So I want to be clear that we also know that Ed is capable of being verbally abusive to Liz. Was it before the tell-all? Was it after the tell-all? Who knows? But that's clear. And some people might have a problem with me sympathizing with him. And that's okay as well. Everyone can have their own emotions about this, their own reactions. That's, I guess, part of the reason why this show exists, is that we have an emotional reaction to it, and that's okay. But as a clinician, as a therapist, and really as a human being, I want to be there for everyone. And I've treated people like Ed. I've treated people much worse than Ed when it comes to abuse, horrific things, and I try to help them. That's my job. I'm a therapist, and I decided a long time ago that I wasn't going to turn away certain kinds of people because I wasn't comfortable with their issues. That I was going to take anyone who wanted to work on something, anyone who wanted to talk with me and wanted to meaningfully work in therapy, I was going to be there for them. Particularly those people who typically get rejected by others and therapists. I was like, well, if those people have almost no one to turn to, they need someone to be there for them. And I signed up in this career, in this life path, to be there for those people. Now, it didn't always work out. And sometimes I would come across psychopaths and people who had no empathy for anyone and were just trying to trick me. That would happen for sure. But most of the time that didn't happen. And most of the time people like Ed would come to me and there were lots of tears, lots of traumas, lots of issues. Would the narcissism or would the abuse go away quickly? No, it would not. It would take years and years and years. And even 10 years later, they would still have moments where they would revert to that old behavior because it gets ingrained in you. But they would try, and they would keep trying, and they would keep working, and they would keep going down the path. And I would commend them for that. I would feel bad for those around those people who they were abusing, even while I was treating them. That was happening. But I wanted the clients who were the perpetrators, who were struggling with personality disorders, to have at least one place where they could go where they could heal. And that's me. You can have your own reaction for sure. Comment below. Let me know what you think.
I love Liz. I think I always will. I don't know if it's going to work. I mean, at least we're talking.
As much as I want to jump in and would want to consider it so fast, there's just always doubt in my head that you're still going to throw me away.
I just want to say they're right back where they started, where he is in that mode where he's very apologetic and very nice, and he is saying he's pushing for them to take it to another level, and she is in that same place where she's like, I'm unsure, I don't know, and if history is an indication of what's going to happen now or in the future, then she will give in and say yes, even though she's not quite ready to do that, and then the cycle will happen probably all over again, unless his work in therapy really helps, which is a new factor in the story of Ed and Liz.
I couldn't trust myself, so I couldn't trust you. And I told my daughter I'm going to have Liz move in. She goes, why? So I can learn to trust her. And then Tiffany's like, Ed, that's the opposite. You should not want her to move in because you trust her. And again, this is issues about me.
Right. So he's admitting to what I think is honest, that he does not believe deep down that anyone is going to love him, that when people give him a lot of evidence that they want to be with him, that he doesn't really believe it. And the closer he gets to someone, the more the paranoia builds up maybe. And he says, I wanted her to move in with me because I didn't trust that she would love me. Instead of, I trust that she, Tiffany said, look, you should trust that someone loves you and then move in with him. You shouldn't move in with them because you don't trust that they love you. But when you're operating from a place of relational traumas that tell you that you're unlovable and no one's ever going to love you, then you resort to those kinds of things, particularly as you get closer to someone. Now, a lot of people, including the daughter, Tiffany, will tell Ed to say, just knock it off. But those kinds of beliefs about the self become so ingrained in your personality that even if your conscious mind knows that it's not rational, it's impossible to get rid of that feeling. A lot of us are walking around, if not every one of us, are walking around with irrational ideas about who we are and how people see us, even though our conscious mind might be like, I don't know if that's exactly rational. But we can't get away from that. And so we can't just convince ourselves. We can't be like, stop it. Stop having body dysmorphia. Stop having low self-esteem. Stop having low self-worth. Stop believing that shameful thing about yourself. Stop beating yourself up. It helps to do that, by the way. You should try, because it does lessen it a little bit, but it doesn't take it away. What takes it away is corrective experiences, corrective emotional experience, corrective attachment experiences, where you have secure attachments, maybe with this therapist, such that you actually learn a new lesson and you actually do believe deep down that you are lovable, and then you don't have to engage in all those defenses that cause all the problems.
I've missed Ed a lot this last month.
Oh.
As far as the future, we were talking about it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I still love him. I still want to be with him.
Yeah, so the other cast members, I'm guessing, are expressing the ugh feeling that a lot of people watching the show, like, no, Liz, don't do it. But, there's a chance. I've worked with couples like this, where there is someone who actually does exhibit abuse, like on the maybe even worse than what Ed is exhibiting. And that doesn't erase people's love for each other all the time. Sometimes it does. So Liz might be making a mistake, and I'm sure a lot of you might believe that she is. But there is a possible path forward where there is functionality and health for the two of them. There's also a path forward where it's even worse than it was before. There's also a path forward where Ed is a manipulative psychopath and he is just tricking everyone, including me, into having sympathy for him. That's also possible. I've treated people like that before. I've known people like that in my personal life. So who knows? But I don't know. Well, I'm guessing that we'll find out in future seasons. Hey, deserving listeners, as y'all know, I am constantly recommending that people go to therapy. We all need therapy from time to time. Well, one of the options available that is definitely worth checking out is BetterHelp. If you're looking for a therapist, I would give it a try by going to betterhelp.com/Kirk. Make sure you use the promo code Kirk because you get 10% off your first month, and it really helps us out. As you watch these videos, I know many of you have been motivated to find your own therapist, which is great because you deserve it. And I know also that it can be hard to find a good fit, find the right one for you. Well, one of the options available in terms of your shopping is to go to betterhelp.com/Kirk. I've been told you can start communicating with your therapist in under 24 hours. You can message your counselor at any time. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. I've also been told that it's often less expensive than in-person therapy, and you should know that this service is available to clients worldwide. So go to betterhelp.com/Kirk to get 10% off your first month today.
He's pushed me away so many times that when we were talking earlier, I told him, like, if we were to give it a fair chance, it has to be a fair chance.
There's also a world in which Liz is a survivor of a lot of abuse in her life. And 10 years from now, when she recovers from that abuse, she will look back at this relationship and say, I wasn't actually in love with him. I thought I was in love with him because he resembled my abusive father or my abusive ex-husband, but I was actually not in love with him. And I felt love for him for all the wrong reasons. I felt love for him because he resembled those past abusive relationships. And looking back, I have no idea why I was in that relationship. That's also possible.
And I would want to go to therapy together and cutting out our drinking.
You said that...
That's good. So I didn't show those clips, I don't think, but they talked about how most of their fights happened when they were drunk. And that is something that I would see in couples. So she's saying, I want to cut back on the drinking. I want him to go to therapy. I want us to go to therapy. So they're doing what I would recommend if they were actually going to try to work on the relationship for sure. Whether or not it works or not, of course, is unknown.
These were things that I didn't like about myself, that I didn't, like I thought you had all the problems and all the issues. I realized that I have, if not as many, but more issues about me that I have never looked at.
So I'm just going to take a guess. Again, who knows? Maybe he's a psychopath. Maybe he's a horrible person. But I'm guessing that he's not, and that in therapy, he's starting to learn, he through the secure relationship with the therapist, he feels safe enough to actually look at himself and recognize that he has some flaws. And it's interesting that he's revealing to us that when he was listing out the pros and the cons, the good qualities and the bad qualities of Liz, that he had 3 good qualities, one of them including her daughter, her child, and 20 negative things about Liz. And now he realizes, actually, I think those were things that were wrong with me that I was projecting onto you. And I now realize I have just as many problems with me as you do, if not more. And that is growth. That's taking responsibility. This is very different from what we've seen in other behavior from him. With Rose, he didn't exhibit any of this acknowledgement. Is it because of therapy? Is it because he just got older? Is it because he learned from the season with Rose? Who knows? Another element here that we can talk about is that he was young and he got married, I think, kind of young, and had Tiffany, and then got divorced pretty quickly, I think. And then he was single, I think he said, for like 29 years or something. And then he started dating again with Rose. So there's a possibility that he kind of regressed to that of a mindset of a teenager, and he's now kind of working his way through maturity regarding how one interacts and how one feels about the self when they are confronted with a with a romantic relationship and the ups and downs of it. It's not uncommon for a 20-year-old to lack some insight into their personality when it comes to a breakup. It's more likely that a 45-year-old will have more insight into that normally because they have a lot more relationships to have learned from. Not always, of course, but that's generally the trend. So in some ways, Ed might kind of be like a 20-year-old, and he's slowly starting to learn about himself. At least that's the optimistic way of looking at it.
I do have hope we can make it work. My biggest fear is I can give it another shot, and then in 2 days, with people in his ear, he can pretty much just tell me it's not worth it. And because he's done that to me so many times.
Interesting. So is Liz saying that she believes things could work out if Ed didn't have people in his ear? Is she talking about Tiffany? I mean, maybe. All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.